Thank you very much. I will start from the bottom and go back up in terms of the questions, because the issue of this statelessness is an issue that I think every country has issues with. And the good news is some countries, including Gambia, are now reworking their constitution. And this is the time to work on legislation during the change of constitutions into, in terms of the stateless people. How are they going to be part of the country where they're living in? Like you said, a lot of people are born in countries they don't realize they're not citizens until they go for their national ID cards at 18 and they're told they're not citizens of the country and therefore cannot have legal papers from that country. So this is an issue, I think. ECOWAS for sure is giving some assistance in the program in Gambia in the new constitution, and I think we will be doing it with all the countries that will be working on their new constitutions, and also trying to look at those who already have the constitution to see if we can add something to it on this to take care of this issue for statelessness. As you might know, the statistics we have right now for Gambia, for instance, is a strange thing, but 60% of the population in Gambia is not Gambian. So the Gambians are only 40%. So it's a thorny issue, and a lot of questions are being raised as to whether people should be given papers because they've lived there or they were born there. So I think the argument is still on as to who will be given papers. But one thing, though, when it comes to refugees, is very clear that if refugees stay in Gambia, that one, the National Assembly member should know that one. If they stay long enough in Gambia, they have the option, when their country's problems are over, to go home. It's up to them. If not, Gambia gives them citizenship. That was the case of Sierra Leone and Liberia. Most of the Liberians went back, but most of the Sierra Leoneans stayed and were given Gambian documentation to stay. So they're no longer stateless for those who didn't want to go. But it's not all the countries that have this kind of legislation, and I think it's because also refugees, the approach to refugees in Gambia is to actually not put them in camps, but they live within the communities. So it's easy for them to have a better life, because as they're allowed to work and do other things. But each country has different laws, which we might look at the level of ECOWAS to have a synthesized law on this issue. In terms of the health status of refugees, depending also, again, these all depend on countries and what they're willing to do in terms of their agreements with UNHCR, of course, registers refugees, and in countries where they live in camps, they make sure they run the camps. But for countries that don't have camps, it's up to the countries to decide whether they will actually give their refugees health insurance, to give them support in other ways. And for the displaced persons who are in countries for a number of years, I think the countries should really have new strategies on how to deal with this kind of people. Because some people, all their children are born in that new country, they have nowhere else to go, that's their only country. So this is where members of the ECOWAS Parliament are important, because my brother from Gambia was asking about popularizing the legal documents. This is actually the role of the National Assembly, in the National Assembly in the countries, and working with CSOs and NGOs. And I'm hoping that this work will be done. And this is why we always come to talk to you, to give you information. So in terms of our legal documents, you can discuss, and those that have not been ascended to and become part of the national legislation. Because in terms of the Kampala Convention, everybody has signed but Cape Verde. But then how many have moved to the next level? And the only country that has gone all the way is Niger. So we're hoping that Niger will act as our goodwill ambassador and work closely with UNHCR and ECOWAS to ensure that all the other parliaments get to that level. Because once it's domesticated, it becomes part of the law of the countries. And all these issues we're discussing, we might not have to discuss if this is done. And the ECOWAS biometric card, it can change the lives of refugees, but at the same time, actually curb statelessness. Because once you have your biometric card, ECOWAS biometric card, all your information is there. If you're a criminal, it's going to be there. So certain countries might not allow you in if you have a criminal past once they run the biometric. All the information on you will be in this biometric card to help countries you're moving to make decisions about whether to let you in or not. And so I think it will help. It will increase the security, number one, in the ECOWAS space. It will greatly improve security so that the bandits who run from country to country will be controlled. So it's a very important card, and it's important for countries to quickly move with it. In terms of the legal intervention of returning land to people, I think, like I said, these are additions that can be done to constitutions in the different countries. ECOWAS can assist, can provide technical backstopping for the work to be done. And in terms of domesticating laws in the countries, we're willing to support. And that's why we come to you, like I said, all the time to see what we can do in the different countries if you let us know what you want. But I think most countries now are working on this land issue. Because when you look at the analysis or the early warning analysis for West Africa, land is one of the key areas of problems right now, and it's going to get worse. As we settle cities, we too have not been, when you look at the traditional way of living, those mobile, mobile populations, who the herders always had a way they travel with their cattle, with the water and everything. But people in the city have now started encroaching on their land where they feed their animals. That's why we're having all this tension, because the land we have is not enough now for farming, so we're moving into land that was left for herders. So these are issues that we are trying to work with the Agriculture Department. We are working closely with them on how to talk to countries to please leave those spaces that have always traditionally been for herders, so that the conflict that is arising will be much lower, the incidence of problems that we've been having. In terms of the land, it has to be the goodwill of every country to put something in their laws for returning people their land. It always depends on the law, because I know in Gambia some land are owned by families, and so even when they go, I think the land stays there, because there will be at least one family member left who will be in charge of the land, and when the others come, they just reclaim their land. But then in other countries, it's more complicated. And I think what can be done is this same issue again. As people move, our land issue becomes the #1 issue for conflict in West Africa. And we are going to find a way of resolving it, but the countries have to take the lead. ECOWAS can only assist. It cannot force the countries to change their land laws. I know Liberia has excellent land laws, which we might all look at and be influenced by. For one thing, I know they don't allow people outside of Liberia to own land there. So even after all these years of them being refugees, they have gone back to their land and found their land, which cannot be said for other countries. So we can look at how they worked out the land laws and to learn from them. So these are things we're willing to assist with, is if you come to us, and we're hoping that at national level, these issues you will also bring at the level of the parliament, the national parliaments. And in terms of refugees, we had the question about what is the strategy for return. The return is going to depend on the refugees themselves when they feel like the places where they come from are safe enough to return, because usually due diligence is done, then they're allowed to return. And I think every country working with UNHCR and WFP has this strategy for return, and it's going to depend on the refugees who want to return and what they want to do. In terms of refugees and neighboring countries, we all know that most refugees move next to the next country, the closest country next to them. And usually with this issue of so-called terrorism, which I totally agree is just bandits actually roaming our countries, you find that they come, most of them we have discovered, come and register as refugees in these countries and then start operating. That's why they're moving so fast. Because I know about 6 months ago, they arrested a gang of 60 youths in Gambia, and none of them was Gambian. They came all the way as far as Ivory Coast, everywhere. And they're just going to border towns and attacking along the West Africa coast. We discovered as they came down, they would go on the borders and just steal cattle, steal guns. They found many arms on them. So they're not terrorists, they're just thieves and gangs. And I think this is an issue that we should be worried about and work on some legislation. And they don't enter the countries with ID cards or identity. They wait until night time or where they find a porous border and they come in. So they're not even, the country doesn't even know that they're in there until they cut them. That's why I think the biometric card is very important, and also our borders should really be protected. So I'll stop for now, unless there are other.
Thank you very much, Madam Commissioner. Dear colleagues, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to suggest that since indirectly we